At the edge of a forgotten town stood Blackwood Asylum. The townspeople spoke of it in hushed tones, saying it was cursed. Ethan, a curious 12-year-old, didn't believe in curses. He had heard the stories how the patients screamed about shadows, how patient number 407 vanished the night the asylum shut down. One evening, he grabbed his flashlight and stepped toward the abandoned building. The asylum loomed before him, windows shattered, walls covered in vines. The wind howled through the cracks, almost whispering. The door was slightly open. 10 minutes, he told himself, and stepped inside. The air was damp, thick with decay. His footsteps echoed. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from deep inside. His heart pounded. Probably just the wind, he whispered, moving toward a hallway lined with doors. Most doors were open, revealing empty rooms, but one at the far end was shut tight. Scratches covered it, like someone had tried to claw their way out. He reached for the handle, but before he could touch it, a whisper came from behind him. "Why are you here?" Ethan spun around, flashlight shaking. The hallway was empty, but then the door creaked open on its own. Inside, strange symbols were scratched into the walls. An old chair sat in the center, with restraints hanging from its arms. On the floor lay a file. Ethan picked it up, hands trembling. Patient hashtag 407 dot status. Escaped. Believed to be hiding in the woods. Warning. Highly unstable. Do not engage. The flashlight flickered. Ethan looked up and froze. A tall figure stood in the corner, its hollow eyes staring. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered. Ethan stumbled back, dropping the file. The figure stepped closer. Its footsteps were slow, deliberate. Panic took over. He bolted down the hall, but the asylum had changed. The hallways twisted, leading him in circles. The whispers grew louder. "Run, Ethan. Run." Finally, he saw an exit. Without thinking, he burst through it and found himself in the forest. The cold night air hit his face as he ran, but the whispers followed. The trees seemed alive, their branches clawing toward him. His flashlight died, leaving him in darkness. He tripped over a root and fell, scraping his hands. When he looked up, he wasn't alone. Standing nearby was the figure from the asylum, but this time it looked different. Its face was no longer hollow and twisted. It looked like Ethan. Exactly like him. "You can't leave," it whispered. "You belong here now," Ethan screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the forest. The next day, the townspeople searched for him. All they found was his flashlight lying at the asylum gates. The townspeople searched the forest for days, but found no trace of Ethan. The forest itself seemed different now, darker and more oppressive. The trees seemed to whisper with the wind. Despite all their efforts, the only thing they found was Ethan's flashlight, lying at the gates of Blackwood Asylum, still open as though he had just been there. Over time, the town began to forget about the night Ethan disappeared. But every evening, an old villager would stand near the forest's edge, hearing whispers on the wind. Sometimes a figure would appear near Blackwood, slowly moving through the trees, unseen by anyone else. And to the townspeople, that figure looked exactly like Ethan. Years passed, but the story of Ethan's disappearance was never forgotten. Every so often, someone new would come to the town, curious about the haunting tales of Blackwood Asylum. But they were warned. Just like Ethan once was, some things are better left unexplored. Curiosity has a price, they'd say. Some doors should never be opened, and as the townspeople walked away, they would always feel the wind shift, like something was watching them, waiting for them to make the same mistake.